Bring in film critic and awards commentator Richard Fitzwilliams, who joins us now live from London. Richard, it's sad news, and we'll move past the investigation of which we know no more details, and just celebrate the life and times of one of the all-time greats. You know, how would you remember Gene Hackman?
I think he was a truly phenomenal actor. I mean, he managed, despite nightmarish childhood. His father deserted, his mother died tragically, and also early years where he was frequently underestimated. He had this ability. I think a lot of it, the key to it, was his face. On the surface, he could look like every man, and yet he could he'd morph into a menacing figure such as the sheriff in The Unforgiven, or someone like one of his great roles, Popeye Doyle. He was a racist, womanizer, and alcoholic, but nonetheless he set himself a task and he intended to fulfill it. The facts of the matter clearly are that there were several really amazing roles, and he used the fact that he could, as it were, change so marvelously, I think, to very, very great advantage. And the fact also that he was a consummate actor. He really could be both menacing, charming, and, as we discovered in the Royal Tenenbaums, which surprised me, he could be very funny.
Funny, yes, comedy as well. I mean, you mentioned the face, and by his own admission, he didn't have classic Hollywood looks. I think he once said that he had a face that it looked like it had been hit by a truck, which was definitely being rather unkind to himself. But you mentioned that range, and when you look at The French Connection, one of the great films, he could be a hard man, he could be a comedic figure, even a comic book role, and it just speaks to a great range that he had.
A great range indeed. He could be a camp villain such as Lex Luthor in Superman, or alternatively, for example, the FBI agent who was perfectly prepared to stretch the law if required when investigating the deaths of civil rights workers in Mississippi burning. So he had this ability to, as I say, metamorphose, and he had this amazing range of performances. But one of his greatest roles, I think, was in Francis Ford Coppola's 1974 film, recently re-released after 50 years, The Conversation. He plays a surveillance expert who starts taking an interest in his cases. As his conscience takes over, he self-destructs. I mean, that was an absolutely magnificent performance. He won 2 Oscars for The Unforgiving and for another film, but there is no question that, in my view, that performance and that of Popeye Doyle, I mean, it was absolute genius. And with The Unforgiving in the 1990s and then the Royal Tenenbaums after that, he had admirers, and they would, for example, enjoy he was villainous in Extreme Measures, good performance in The Firm, and there were some 80 films. And although he was reclusive in recent years, he wrote, which I think must hopefully have been something of a consolation. He was a tough bruiser in private life, there's little question about that, and someone who was very temperamental, but we will remember him from these amazing range of characters he created. And he was so lucky to get the break in 1967 playing Clyde Barrow's brother in Bonnie and Clyde.
Bonnie and Clyde.
An excellent performance.
Yeah, indeed, Richard. We have to leave it there. I wanted to ask you about The Scarecrow, one of his lesser-known films, one of his favourites when he played a con man alongside Al Pacino as part of the American New Wave, but we'll have to leave that for another day. Richard Fitzwilliams, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.